Mercy, mercy.
Boy,
Happy
okay.
Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Yes.
No, for real. Like, I'm sitting here, like,
Oh,
why
man.
are we here right now? That's
Lord.
the first question I'm asking.
First of all, it's been what? When's the last time we recorded?
It was 2017. You were
Jesus.
just elected
Jesus.
as a city councilman.
Started at 26.
Yeah.
26. Golly.
It was 2017. We were sitting. I came down from Chicago.
Yes.
We were
And
in
you had
that
a
first
group.
office. Yeah.
Man, you bring me. I got 5 gray hairs, and they all was from that week. Yeah.
Yep. We were.
Bright eyed.
Uh-huh.
This is when the camera would cut to that version of me. I was all happy, and then they played like happy music and stuff like that.
Us laughing. But
Yeah,
you know
they-
what? We
oh,
go
yeah.
back to, 2006. 2004, I want to say, is when I met you, and you was getting on my nerves.
This
the
first day.
time. The first time.
Everybody's story.
The first time.
Everybody's story with me starts with, I met you when you was getting on my nerves.
Yeah,
I'm
it
like,
hadn't stopped. But
anybody happy to meet me the first time? My mom was like, I met you when you was getting on my nerves.
You know what? You just had such as
Bless
do I.
it. Bless
Okay.
it.
Strong personality. I feel like
Yeah.
you always were pressing somebody's
Yes.
buttons. Because it was like,
You
ooh, let
sound
me
like
press
my
this button,
grandma.
see what this do when you
Yeah.
when
I mean, the
do
button's
this.
there. So I mean,
And then I remember the moment where I ended up visiting your church
I see.
at that time.
Yeah.
And you were, of course, you were younger than me, but I came from a state where the grades were different. So the classes were different. So we ended up in a class together. Social studies, and I love the teacher we had. I can't remember his name.
Mr. Faceiger.
That's it. He
That's
was
my
amazing.
guy.
Man,
Yo,
he
he's
was so
amazing.
balanced.
Yeah, he is.
But yeah, I remember seeing you at church.
Mm-hmm.
And before then I thought like,
When I could sing.
I mean, maybe you were singing.
Okay, let's just hold on to that
But,
memory. All right.
but we were, before I was like, this dude thinks he knows it all. That's how I felt anytime I had seen you. I was like, oh Lord, here he goes again with another opinion.
I've heard of
Oh,
that guy.
so many opinions.
I've heard.
But it was the first time I saw you ask questions.
Yeah.
And the questions you asked and the humility I saw, I was like, oh, I love him. And I think I was dating somebody at your church.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I was like, Lord, okay, we're stuck now.
Facts. And I have been bothering you ever since. And first, before I even get further down, let me just start by saying congratulations.
Thank you.
Everybody don't win the lottery, but I heard he did. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to win Keno. But I'll just say to you, it was the same way. Again, everybody would say it. You're magnetic. You've been blessed with, like, you can draw people and things out of people, which is why I'm sitting here, that people didn't know they needed drawn out. God has given you that Dorcas spirit, I think, in a lot of ways, where there's just no negative word about you.
That's
And
not
I
true.
think there's let me just say, not on the mainstream, but the value of who you are in its holistic view, right? We all got negatives, but the value of who you are in its holistic view, everybody would rather say, instead of the other way, you in their life, they say we need you in our lives. And I'm one of those people. I mean, you know more about me than the man of the moon. So it's been a blessing over this long time frame. And even just being as a councilman, when we first had our first interview, who else would I want to talk to? Unfortunately.
Yeah. And I'll say I'm nervous.
Oh, I can understand.
As someone who loves you,
Yeah.
who's fallen in love with this city, because
Right.
I am a transplant here.
Right.
But my father was raised here.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
my grandma had a house in Edmonton Heights.
Yeah.
On Eaton Road,
And them
okay?
heights, yeah.
You know, that's where I visited all the time. And, you know, moving back to Huntsville after living in Chicago for some time, you know, seeing the value here and seeing, you know, how fragile certain things are.
Absolutely.
Right? In a city like this, in the South, how fragile people are. I am, you know, when you called and we talked about this, I got nervous. One, because I love you and I want, you know, the best for anyone I'm connected to. And I worry about, like, okay, what could and what this, you know, I try not to operate in fear, but it's like, I'm concerned. Maybe that's better, right? At the same time, though, it's like, okay, we've been through some things. If we're going to talk, who do I trust to talk and care about you, you know, in a certain type of way. And I know that this is something where you're walking on water. And when we talked about this before.
Deep waters.
whew, deep waters, okay? But when you're walking on them, you don't have to know how deep they are. But that's a whole different thing, okay? But me and my fiance Kason, we have that podcast, Water Walkers, because I believe in living a type of life where you take the risk. You're willing to get out the boat, right? And I've always said, growing up in church, they would be like, he took his eyes off of Jesus. He started sinking. And the focus has always been,
what happened?
What happens when he takes his eyes off of Jesus?
But he got there.
But I'm like, even if he would have died, y'all.
That's a way to go.
After 2 or 3 steps. Man, that obituary is like, how this man died? Well, he was walking on water for a little bit.
And he started moonwalking. And then, Jesus was like, he was like, calm down. But no, I understand.
But for real, it's like he walked far enough that he couldn't grab onto the boat and just hop in.
Right, but he was close enough to Jesus to give him a hand. And you know what? I'll just say was tough in this moment, because that feeling, beyond this, right? I think that a lot of people want to define me in this moment, and that's understandable for some. But in the bigger scheme of things, I've been at this thing for 6 years. Mm-hmm. I was just 2 years ago, I was finishing up my 4 neighborhood move. Just 2 years ago, I was my last year being a foster parent. I had them 2 boys for 3 years, So throughout this process of I'll just say what I feel is my purpose and my calling, I've had really deep, deep, deep valleys. And in this moment where I think, because it is publicized from California to DC to all over the world, I'm more aware that I don't want people to be hurt or nervous or anything by what I do. But I'm going to tell you, the most moment of clarity I've ever had, and maybe there is a piece that I think now surpasses others in the understanding in itself, is, man, God said, can you hear me now? This is the most clear I've ever heard God. And I hate to say it took all of this, but for a lot of people, who've contacted me and called me and all the above, I keep telling them I'm still in my purpose. Mm-hmm. I still feel like God has called me to this. But boy, as I said, in the statement, I needed this. Mm-hmm. Now, I wish God wouldn't have done it so publicly, but I think the value of understanding that when he decides that he gets your attention, the clarity is instant. Yeah. I remember even a number of events that have happened in the past 6 years where I was on the edge, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I could, I thought he was in the thunderstorm. You know what I mean? I thought I was Elijah on the valley, but he was just a still, small voice. And he has said in ways I cannot explain, can you hear me now? And it was like what we were talking about earlier, really.
Yeah. And I know you said, man, I can hear him now. Wish it wouldn't have been done so publicly.
Right.
In my experience, I haven't seen anything done publicly the guy has not warned anybody about privately.
Mercy. Come on.
And so we begin to hear, but you didn't have to do all that. And it's usually like, I wasn't trying to. Okay, I was trying to. You remember that one time? Right. So when you look back and you're like, okay. Right. I mean, what's done is done. You can't unscramble eggs, like my daddy says.
Right.
You can't unring a bell. But when you look back and you're like, oh, I can hear you now, but I need to learn how to hear that whisper. I need to learn how to hear these things. What are those moments where you now say you were talking then?
Man, I think it's rare because just take the legality. We can't discuss it or anything when it comes to that legality of this situation. Right. But I will say in its enormity, the amount of reach and what has reverberated back. What I realized, as we talked about earlier, and just being completely honest with you, is I now see, as we saw in the Old Testament and the New Testament, while God really, when people are in purpose, puts a thorn in your side to attack your pride. Because I realized that good intentions ain't God intentions. And I ain't never realized that until really this year, this moment. I would have really thought that I could change the whole world, just me. Mm-hmm. For the past 6 years, I was like, I'm going to fix foster care. I'm going to fix North Huntsville in 2 days. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was giving God this list of things that I was going to do, and he was just along for the ride. Now, good intentions, but my awareness was I had never just slowed down. And that didn't mean everything I did, but most of the things I did, never slowed down and say, hey, God, what's the plan? Mm-hmm. And if that's the plan, am I, able to and open to say, okay. Mm-hmm. Because it might not be as grand as I want it to be. You know what I mean? I want to put a Starbucks on this corner. Yeah. And he like, not right now. So I think when I look back over the last couple of situations, it's been failing in relationships and friendships. It's been overextending myself to give 60% to one person, 30% to the other, and 10% and saying I gave 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's this impatience, man. It's this impatience that, not to just draw too many from the Bible, but when Nehemiah goes back, he gets help. He equips individuals to do multiple things. And instead of me thinking I'm Superman, I never really felt that I naturally empowered those who God said, hey, this is somebody that you need to coordinate with. Now, sometimes we did, but most of the time I felt like I could do it all.
So what have you learned about your intentions? Because just personally, I know there are things that I've judged as good intentions. Right. And then the reason why they weren't God intentions is because they weren't as good as I thought they were. Right. I didn't go deep enough. And so someone once told me, we judge ourselves off of our intentions and others off of their actions.
Right.
So when you go back and you say, okay, if I was looking at actions, and I'm not just talking about the recent moments, but going back.
Yes, ma'am.
If you had just to look at your actions.
Right.
What does that tell you about what could have been your intention that you weren't seeing? Or if God's like, yeah, I hear you. It sounds good when you say, I was just trying to save everybody. But what is that really?
Right. So what it was an impatience to timeline. So when I never planned on being a city councilman. When I was in Boston, I was living good. You know what I mean? Making good money, riding the metro. But I was enjoying life. And my plan to come back was really just a small chapter, a snippet. And I remember telling one of my friends, I'll just be here a couple years. I could fix this in a couple days, call it a day, figuratively speaking. So then when you get into the work, there's no doubts in my mind that it came from a selfish place. I was moving every year to these neighborhoods. I was helping people pay utilities, cutting grass, all these things because I wanted to prove I could do what I said when I first started. Mm-hmm. I could do this in 2 days. Well, there's the pride. There's the arrogance. Mm-hmm. So I do believe you can be called to something and then not realize that you're called for a time that God deems, not for the time that you deem. So called to the work. And in my mind, I was like, I'll rotate out of this work and be somewhere else and doing my own thing. But that's not full submission.
Well, what about yourself made you think you were so special?
I know.
That you could do the work that people had put in decades that also served the same God, had done. Like when you look at that, why do you think you have been the exception?
Because I'm Darlene's son. No, it's fine. I think the perspective was when you know that you didn't plan for something and God gives you a vision. This goes back to, I'll just use the Johnson thing as an example. I kept being so frustrated by what people were saying about me online and all this. And I was like, God, you showed this to me. Show them. And my idea was, if you show to everybody, then we'll be good. But he showed me for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I knew that in the perspective of success that I had seen up to this point, it was I would get a vision. He would give me some skills. I would go work hard. The outcome would be grad school, scholarships, all the above. So in this, I thought it was no different. I thought it was, hey, you told me to go do something. It's very obvious what you told me to go do. Show everybody so they can get on accord with me, and we good. We gonna roll. When that doesn't happen, right? When that, what your normal algorithm is, if you work hard, you have a vision, you take your skills, and it equals success, doesn't happen, that's where you get to that point to think, hold on, wait a minute. Did I read this wrong? Did I hear this wrong? I think what motivated me earlier on, and it's just so crazy to have that clarity now to think that it's special to me, was it had worked so many times before. I had a rap sheet. My life. I had a rap sheet of I'll apply some perspective, sometimes charisma, sometimes hard work, sometimes all these above. I was really blessed with a brain that could do numbers, that can do these things. And then at the outside, everybody's like, dang, okay, I see you. You did a good job. So if that's the case, you apply that to an issue with the community that was starving for an injection of support, economic development, housing development, the list goes on. So 1 + 1 = 2 in the past. Well, there was a number difference here that I just didn't account for.
So you're saying what I'm hearing, okay, if I'm looking at someone else, it's like, okay, when you were looking at other people, were you saying, okay, they don't have the skills I have, or they don't have the formula, so that's why I can go in and do in 2 days what not taking all these people to doing 20.
Right. And that's, I don't think it's any correlation to people. I'm saying I think it was the season for Northwest Huntsville to have those things. And again, it's not just Northwest. I think the injection of being a city councilman is for the city of Huntsville. I have not just done things for Northwest Huntsville, I've done things for the city. Mm-hmm. And the value of, again, being selfless to it. It's not on my bucket list to be a 27-year-old city councilman. Mm-hmm. So my perspective was, okay, God, I know what you told me. You know, my friends have prayed on it. They believe in it. Let's go do it. And then when you start seeing those things happen, like, all right. But what I know happened was I believed I could time frame it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm involved, it's going to be a shorter time frame. And that's unrealistic because one, that stretches me thin. Two, that puts constraints on God as if I'm God. Like, mm-hmm. Hey, we're going to get this done in 8 years. And that's not how he works. And that lack of full submission really just brought out that level of arrogance. I started trying to do literally everything and stretch myself thin, as well as, people don't say it all the time, stretch my faith thin. Mm-hmm. And everybody before me set up the opportunity for me to do what I do today. I'm the byproduct of people setting the stage for me to be who I am today and be successful in the ways that I am today. And it takes somebody, this moment is very vulnerable, to be humble enough to say, I wouldn't have the success if it wasn't for my predecessor. He wouldn't have the success if it wasn't for his predecessor. The list goes on. Whoever's after me, the same way. But I do believe where I had this disconnect, I know, I don't think, I know, is that I thought I could tell God, well, we're just going to do what we always done. It's going to go the same way it's always gone.
Now, see, even you, and I know you're saying it's from a different place, but even when you became city councilman, those things of saying, hey, we didn't make it here on my own. Like, I'm walking on the foundation my predecessor said.
Absolutely.
So those are things you said at that time. Mm-hmm. You said it the whole way through. You ran a campaign a certain way because you said, hey, I want to give respect to these people. You're saying the same things.
Right.
How do you know? How do people who are following you know that it's different if it sounds the same?
I guess I'll say if your tone never changes, there's a reality to that. It's been the same for 7 years. But then it goes back to even this moment that I'm in. I can't let everybody define me. I got to be true to myself. And I know how I feel about people. I know what's in my heart. And some people are going to agree with me in this past situation. Some people are like, that lets me know who he is. And mm-hmm. They're going to define me by one thing versus 6 years. But I'll never change from that. I mean, I was raised by a strong grandmother, a strong mother. And the perspectives that they shared were reared in this Northwest community. I'm a byproduct of this Northwest, also the Huntsville community. And to have the respect of those before you are the foundational needs to build a strong structure. And that's what we're building in Northwest Huntsville. I think the only thing I think that if you think about older generations that truly has hurt is I saw some of the community leaders as places or wells of wisdom I would draw. Mm-hmm. And the politics of life sort of cut those wells off. And that, just being young, you can't, most of the people in my seat are, double my age. They're 30 years older than me. So they have more life experiences, more wisdom, all the above. But it's hard in my immaturity to not hold grudges, to not take that personal. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't you open yourself up when I showed up? Because I'm the young, you know what I mean? But the politics of that life sort of polluted some of those relationships, and me immaturely holding grudges will affect those things. And that takes maturity to turn back and say, though we might not agree on place and space, we both love this community. How can we work together? That takes maturity of me. I'm putting it on me. I'm not speaking for anybody else.
Okay. Now I will say, okay, so we're at this space where you're like, man, I thought I was the exception. And now I'm realizing I'm not. Right. And I can have good intentions, make harmful decisions or decisions that could potentially be harmful to people I care about and folks that have trusted in me. And it's like, okay, now I've learned this lesson, or I'm learning, maybe in the process of learning this lesson of like, okay, I'm not the exception. God has been with others the way he is with me. And, I need to listen for his voice. Okay, well, in this case, right, even us sitting here, a lot of those same voices would say, you should not be sitting here right now.
Right.
You should not be having this conversation. In my wisdom, if you came to me and you might, I would tell you, don't have this conversation. Not right now. So what is making you feel like this is good. Is this an example of you still feeling like you're the exception?
No. I think anytime that you feel led to have a conversation, because again, the perspective of people outside of our own circle are going to be, no matter what I do, what it is. I'm not having this conversation to change anybody's opinion. It's just that if you would have had this with me in 6 months, this still be the same things I've been saying. This experience has just opened me to be more vulnerable and honest of what it is to mature as a man of God, but also as a leader in the ways that I know I need to mature. I think to shroud yourself and cloak yourself in like a political game, to project something that's not real, in 10 years, no matter where I'm at, if I faked it here, it'll come back up in 10 years. But if I'm genuine to myself, in 10 years, I'll be proud of the growth I've had. And that maturing, though it's public and it's tough, and it affects my mom, my grandma, my friends, it's necessary. I don't know who I'll be in 10 years at 43, but I know this is a staple moment to where people can assess the leader that I saw grow over the past 10 years was obvious in this moment. And again, I got to reverse that. One of the things I've seen in this last situation is people are not aware that they're willing to ask for grace for, let's say, if their son was in a situation, or if their daughter was in a situation, or if they were in a situation. But they don't think about it in giving advice about grace. So people will tell me, hey, Devyn, just run away. Stay in the closet, disappear. Don't fight. And I asked a friend of mine who I really look up to, I was like, would you tell your son that? If you knew the things that I know, if you knew the things that you know, what would you tell? He said, oh no, he was in a similar situation. I said, you fight, you grow up, you stand up tall as a man. I said, I want that advice. Doesn't make it comfortable, but I think it's necessary because I want to be somebody I could be proud of in 10 years.
And I hear that, but I also hear a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
Right? And, we should not all desire to be teachers. You know what I mean? Because of that responsibility. It's not just about, I want to be proud in the next 10 years. Right. It's about the fact that although you keep saying young leader, you're not the young leader anymore, right? Like King was, a certain age too. He was young too. He was this too. But there are people that are coming after you, right? Absolutely. Like we in our 30s now. The millennials are grown with kids. Some of them got grown kids in college, right. So there's a part of it where it's like when we choose to be leaders, we are also saying that we accept the responsibility to be judged, to be looked at on a higher standard. We're saying that to some degree, I'm agreeing to sacrifice some of, not the privileges, but these aspects of life that maybe your normal person has, because there are people that will be affected by my yes, by my no, by my struggles, by my triumphs. And so I do find like sometimes when we're successful, like, hey, I've done this for a community, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. We're very communal. We've done this. I've done this with the community. And then when we make mistakes or we have issues, we become we become individuals again, right? Like, how are you balancing not just what you need? Right. Like, I need this. I need to be able to look back from 10 years. And I do realize that people could look at a video and say if I was lying or telling the truth in 10 years. But what about the now for the people who are hurting that said, man, my little boy was 10 when you were elected, and now this really crushed me, or for your family that you've mentioned Absolutely. Is now hurting. Like, what is your social responsibility in this moment?
Well, again, separate from the legality, which I wish we could discuss, but we can't. Being aware to be, as I did, like at the council, when I said that I will be acceptable in a public setting. When you do wrong, apologizing publicly and being accountable to those things, but whether right or wrong or indifferent, bringing negative attention to my community is never the goal. It's never about the man, it's about the mission. I think in the holistic view, I've had great counsel around me. GW, Marquise, all them, and they have guided me through this perspective of you have to consider those ripple effects before you consider you. And it is nothing that is going to erase all of the, social media and all the above that has gone. But I do think that there's value to saying to the community, hey, I'm still here to work. I'm still here to be who you call me to be. And as I handle this situation, I will be forthcoming in that process to be accountable to you publicly. And like I said, that's separate as much as I wish I could. I can't discuss the legal part, but just the social part. The first thing my mother told me was, you ain't no quitter. Now, she understands that we've been through so much other than this. And my grandmother prayed over me, and my aunties and uncles prayed over me, because they understand, one, I think for any community, I was raised by the village and then returned to try and raise the village. So there's a duality there. There's a connection there. So many people who might even be my blood aunts and friends have a perspective of, let's assess where you are. And then when you're in a better place, assess where you are for the village, the community, the Northwest, the Huntsville. And when you get a time to do that, I've had time to do that, it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. You start to see things with clarity. How, again, separate from anything that is happening now, there were actually blind spots in my life that I was not aware of. One of those being pride and arrogance to think I could do it all. And that affected relationships, that affected friendships, that affected everything I had involved, because I puffed up this view that, 1 + 1 is 2 with Devyn, and it's in the time frame that I say so.
What do you have set up now? Because it obviously, and that's for all of us, it can't be our judgment. Right, it can't even be our interpretation of what I feel God is saying to me right now. It can't even always just be my interpretation of scripture, because all of it is interpretation that guides me. I feel this, so this is it. I interpret scripture like this way, so this is the right way. Right. What do you have? What guardrails do you now have that maybe you didn't have, that involve that wise counsel, that involve that community, that involve this, that say, okay, even if I feel this way, if these people that I also feel like God has set up in my life,
listening to
say
them,
yes or say no,
say yay or nay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do you, how is it different now? Saying, okay, and I'm not just talking about this, because I think the things that happen, like you said, they're ripple effects, right? It happens little by little, but there's a snowball effect, right? So what do you have now that's different from before, where it's like, no, guaranteed, if this happens, I'm going to be accountable, or I'm going to spend more time instead of working so hard. Maybe y'all don't see me as often. I might see you a couple times a year and be like, hey,
mercy me.
But who do you have that's going to be consistent? So to the point where it's like, no, I can see you. Not I see you when you're comfortable enough to be seen, but like, no, I get to show up and be like,
that's real. And I love we can be lighthearted here. I remember when last Sabbath I went, a couple Sabbaths ago, I was down there with Pastor Snell, and I love to joke with him, because I think Pastor Snell probably, I could say this on whatever, he probably sleeps in like a 3-piece suit. So when I see him, I'd be like, I whenever get a chance, the man be clean. But he was giving me counsel, and there have been pastors, Leatherwood and others, who have been big brothers to me, and I realized through all this time frame, they've actually always been there. And moments of like, hey, let's catch up and get some lunch, I would never follow up on. And it almost is like, people don't, the term angel in that way is like messenger. I was getting these messages from people who really cared. You as an example, or Dexter as an example. But when you're clouded, the messages wasn't getting through. So now actually taking up somebody's word on a lunch is one facet. I mean, therapy. Now, therapy didn't just start now. It's been over the time, but over the past year and a half, just being a black man, I'm going to be real. I fed into the stereotype. I ain't going to sit down with nobody, go to therapy, all the above. And then you in there boo-hooing, talk about, man, I ain't had no daddy. You know what I mean? You just like... You thinking of these things that it never come out. Hey, free lunch. And then she's just like, okay. You like, yeah, you go some juice. I remember the second session, I'm in there like, she's like, are you okay? I said, I'm straight. And I literally said the most cliche thing. I was like, you got the air on? And she was like, if you need to cry. I said, you can cry. But even that, and I realized too that I had jumped to these things, and I'll even say it in this moment now. Through all this in the past, we'll just say 7 months, 8 months, those ripples of effects makes me look at all my relationships differently. Like, I was judgmental. Like, I don't think I've ever said this out loud other than therapy. It's like, it makes me look at my father differently. And that's heavy, because just thinking of my brother and me and not having a father, and all those things. And I had judged that man. But I got 2 younger brothers who are the greatest humans in the world. And I can't do that. I don't have no heaven or hell to put him in. And me and my brother, fine, we made it. You know what I'm saying? So those things have happened in the past 6 to 7 months, like you said, that it just ruptures you in the way that you saw yourself in the mirror. You know what I mean? It takes that glare out and gives you clarity. And it's tough because, again, when you're a leader and you're projected, people think that you're like ironclad, you're immovable and all this other stuff. And yeah, I might be productive as a councilman. I'm very blessed by some of the things we've been able to do. But as a human, I still got to grow. As a man of faith, I still got to grow. So some of the things that I just honestly, from therapy to saying no to projects that I used to take on, to balance, coming to an R&B live. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You saw me that night and you would just hug me because I don't never be there. Mm-hmm. But I loved everybody in that community. I had never taken time to do that. You know what I mean?
But are you going to have? Because, and this is why I'm asking in a real sense. I've always been in some type of leadership.
Right.
Right. And I remember a time in my life where because I was so hurt and so ashamed of who I felt like I was. You say I'm a mess of a man, but God.
But God.
Right. And I'm always like, I'm a mess. Like I've always felt like I've been having these conversations a lot lately with friends that I'm now reintroducing to myself to. Because it's like you've only seen one side because I was almost ashamed until I got this part of myself together to come to you, right? So
Speak on that. I
would always say, almost exactly like you said.
You're right.
I was 100% known.
Yeah.
Right? But it depended on what side of me.
You saw me. That's being
so
real.
It's like,
that.
My girl Jazz knows me the most, but she about 60. Okay, she knows this. And then whoever I felt the most comfortable with,
yes, ma'am,
and being exposed to, that I would feel like I would get that love return and would feel like would understand me. Because what I didn't want to, I realized personally, I didn't want to hear the judgment of this person because I knew they didn't understand.
That's real.
Right? You ain't never been through this, so you're going to judge me harshly. But sometimes I needed the judgment of the person that's like, I don't get what you're saying because it's wrong. Right? As opposed to this person who's like, I feel, I almost needed the balance. I feel what you're saying. Because I've been there and I've done this. This is the way out. I needed Paul. I needed Barnabas. I need Paul to be like, you not ready. Yeah. Take him out of here. He's not ready for the gospel. And Barnabas saying, okay, you right, but let me give me some time. And then we're going to come back and then you're going to be good. And so that's why I say, because I think the people who know you have never seen you like ironclad.
Right.
That's why you say the people who know me say, I got on their nerves off the bat. Man, this boy think he know everything. You get on my nerves.
Facts.
So
2 minutes into the conversation.
Man, you have it together. We're saying, listen, I know you think you have to work for your worth.
Ooh.
That concerns me.
Yeah, man.
Because your work will never be good enough.
Mercy.
But then you could be in circles where people only see the good work, right? And you'll never know if like, hey, hold on. I know they praising you about 10 things, but this one thing over here is serious.
It's serious.
So for me, it's like, okay, yeah, you have a lunch over here and you don't deny lunch. You can have 10 different lunches and gave 10% of yourself to 10 different people. Mm-hmm. And all of them could feel like, man, I love him. And he's on a process and I'm with it. But are you in a position, have you really thought about like, no, there's certain people that I am going to make sure whether they ask me or not, they see me. Because I'll walk into a room and they be like, sit down. We need to talk. I don't know what this is.
I'm feeling it in
the
spirit.
You ain't even say nothing. You walk in,
I'm missing my spirit. Come here now.
That joke was funny that you did. It was real cute. I want to laugh.
Yeah.
But let's sit down and get real.
Yeah.
What about that consistency in community?
Whew. So that has probably come within the last year and a half, just from my uncles and friends. And you're right. I don't think that happens overnight, where you work to be vulnerable in ways that you know you need to be. Especially when you, for 30-something years, been a certain way, and you've projected perfection and all this other stuff. And I don't mean perfect in like a social sense. I'm saying like, I'm good. That term, how many times my favorite text, I'm straight. I'm good. You know what I'm saying?
I'd be like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay. You know what I mean? And I think obviously you're engaged. I pray that I, find that in a wife, but in my friendships, in God-centered friendships, that has been obvious. And that word discernment, I got a whole different view of it. I got a whole different feel because there are some of my friends who've been able to say, like you said, sit down. What'd you say? And until the past, we'll just say like this year, really the past 3 or 4 months, and I ask them, I'll be like, how you know that?
Mm-hmm.
What? You know what I mean? No, not me. And they be like, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And, these things really happen to leaders. Depression, anxiety, uncertainty, doubt.
Yeah.
And I thought that, as crazy as it's going to sound, you're right. I could outwork those things. I mean, I kid you not. Being in therapy, to hear somebody tell you, oh, you dealing with depression. And you're like, no, I'm not. I just, like, have you been to North Huntsville? Like, we changing the world. Like, what? Number 1 city in the world. You not see?
A house just opened.
Yeah, come on. Come on. Like, don't doubt. They doubted me. They doubted me.
We building an amphitheater.
Come on. I kid you not. I'm saying these things in therapy. I'm not. Yeah. That's how crazy I am. And she was just like, okay.
Yeah, but how are you?
Yeah, how are you?
But the north side.
Yes, I don't sleep. I don't need sleep. You know what I'm saying?
Because you were mowing the lawn with a flashlight.
That's a fact.
On your forehead.
That's a fact.
At 9 at night because you couldn't sleep. That's crazy. I was like,
that is a fact. That actually happened.
Get your life together.
That's it. And then when somebody be like, hey man, we need you to come up put this, don't call 911. Call me if you need to put the fire out. Like, I was saying stuff like that. That was just, I'm not kidding you. At the same time, living in Glen Park, Roach is the size of this microphone. I'm having conversations with them like, hey, can we get you some affordable housing? You got to get out of here. Like, I thought I could fix everything. I was like, I got a house for a Roach. I got a house for my kids. Killing relationships and everything. But again, that cleared in this moment. And even sitting with you, what I think you said, and I think needs to be stated, you got to have friends that convict you. I don't know if I really thought about it the way I do now, where the conviction is out of love. You feel judged when it's not from the right person. I know people are just not going to like me no matter what. I'm a dark-skinned brother, I think that
you always, that's something
somebody,
that with your eyes were fixed.
I think
because you've said that for years.
As a dark-skinned brother trying to make it in America, I can understand some people won't like me. But I know for a fact that my friends will always love me. And if I can accept, it's not criticism, it's conviction. Hey, you're not moving right. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear that until last 6 months.
And sometimes, honestly, who we call enemies are gifts.
Mercy.
It doesn't matter where your heart is. You're right.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes like, yo, they preaching Jesus? Cool. It don't matter,
That's real.
And I'm saying that personally, right? Because I'm like, but you ain't say that with the right. I already know you out to get me. You don't need, but it's like, sometimes when people actually don't like you.
Right.
They see us better than the people
objectively
who understand us.
Man.
Because it's like, hey, you a little, abrasive, Sharona. You said this way. It's like, man.
Exactly.
But then it's like, hold on, wait, should I look at that? And I know that can also drive you crazy though.
It can.
Right? If you start believing everything everyone says. But in a moment where you've lost clarity, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. I found that in a healthy way, especially if you go into therapy and stuff like that. Sometimes it's like, maybe I take a moment where I start believing people.
That's right.
In a balanced way.
That's so true.
I heard someone was like, man, you have a nice voice. And I'm like, yeah. I sound like my mama. I sound like my auntie. I sound like my dad. And so I would always dismiss people. And I went through literally 3 months when I was trying to heal from so much. Where it's like, whatever somebody tells me, I'm going to believe.
Yeah.
And they would be like, you have a nice voice. I said, great.
I was one of them people.
I'm going to test that. No, really. And I started making money just talking.
Yes.
Read this. I'm like, will people pay me for this?
Yes.
Right? But then at the same time, someone might say, hey, I had a friend literally, because I've been big Rona, little Rona, thick Rona, everything. You've seen all of the Ronas, okay?
Corona. I'm just saying.
But for real, I had a friend one time say, you know what? She's real country. Sharona, you keep saying you're going to work out and stuff, and I see you working out here and there. But sometimes you inconsistent. I'm just trying to figure out, am I about to love big Rona or little Rona? Because I love either one.
Come on, Patricia.
But just let me know, because I'm over here supporting and praying. And you go work out and you do this, but then you come back and then you stop and then you come back.
Oh,
let me know. Both of them beautiful.
That's good.
And I sat there and I was like, in that moment, we still talk about it. And she'd be like, I can't believe I ever said that to you.
Yeah.
But I say all the time, do you know how loving that was? It hurt. But, all this time I've been saying for years, I'm doing this, and I'm calling it consistency. And she's saying, I'm looking at you, I'm giving you effort. And every time you come to me, you want to work out, I'm here. But I'm also sick of you having to come back to me.
That's a word.
Like, I wish you would just stay.
Just stay.
And for me to you, I'm like, stay. Whatever you decide.
Yeah.
Like, stay. As busy as you are, and it might be 5 people. When I read Michelle Obama's book and they were like, they had 10 people they could put in their phone. I'm like, I'm sure somebody studied that. Somebody probably got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to realize you only need 10.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, well, Jesus had 12.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah, they'll play that third.
Whatever. But
I guess we'll take Judas too.
Right? I guess maybe he could have. Yeah. No, but, like finding that these people can get to you.
Mm-hmm.
That if hey, this is the rule between us. If I don't respond in 24 hours. So,
that's good.
Because even in therapy, I'll say this as, me and with my fiance, our therapist said, you need to have rules of engagement. He said, and this will save you. He said, what I mean is this, there's certain things you do all the time. Even if it's like every time you leave, there's a hug. Every time you leave, there's a kiss. Every time you leave, I say this, you say this. Every time I text, you respond in this amount of time, whatever that is. He said, because it'll let you know when even a little bit something's off. So if he leaves, and when this is actually work, because we always hug, give each other a kiss, we're leaving each other's presents. There's one time we got a little, we our personalities, we don't argue, but we know it's arguing. Okay.
Start speaking in tongues.
Okay. Well, love you too.
Yeah.
Right. And then 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, we didn't hug.
Oh.
So it was like, we ain't hug. Yeah, I'm at work. Yeah, I'm on the way there.
That's beautiful.
Like, we got to.
Yeah.
This is because these are the little things. For you, just as someone who loves you, you might need some rules of engagement.
That's true.
That it's like, I know something's off because this is what we always do. And some of it, when people care about you, they already have their rules of engagement.
That's real.
They know what you do when you come in the house. That's why they're like, sit down.
Right. Or even when you pick up the phone, I'm thinking of a friend, like, dang, what's wrong? And I'm like, nah, man, I'm just calling you. I ain't got no problem. What you talking about? I'm Devyn. I'm good. Ain't no problems. That's big. I'm gonna start using that rules of engagement. I'll double that to say not just enemies. There's a couple of people I work with at the city, and when I lay out, 4-year plan, 6-year plan, all these other things, I'll hit them and say, "Oh, we got to hit it here. Or we got to do it this way." And the way that they're able to, they're not. I would say not my political persuasion. They're not the color of my skin. They're not in my age bracket. All these things. The way they're willing to objectively stop me and sort of reproach it. When I first got in office, boy, man, you racist, just being completely vulnerable. I'm like, I see why everybody hates you. I'm smart too, and all these. And they were like, I'm not disagreeing with that, but this isn't gonna work. It took me about 2 years for them to turn from Darth Vader to an angel. You know what I mean? So. But now I know the things we've gotten done and we will get done are because of those relationships. And that perspective that you just shared, well, I could definitely say that probably heavily impacted just my dating relationships. Because that's consistent commitment. That's the other thing too. Something we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I've always been consistently committed to the mission and not people. And that's tough to admit.
How do you say that? What is the mission then if it's not people?
To do better by people, absent of their emotions, absent of their input, absent of, it's just, it's like a self-edification. Whether some politicians will admit it, but people live by that. People live by, I never say no. It is always my view. You know what I'm saying? That perspective where I've got some of the best input on what should happen in the district from people who have lived there 50 years and only voted one time. Saw me at a Super Walmart or saw me at a Walgreens or something and shared a perspective. And until you're in tune with like, I'm taking that person's view in, you really don't hear those moments. And I again, probably the first 4 years was on a crazy mission.
But it was your mission.
I know. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And the blessing of it is that good things came out of it. The burden of it is to look back on it and say I could have did it better. That I know that I dug a hole emotionally, socially, spiritually and stuff. And trying to dig yourself out of those things take time. And that's a vulnerability that I don't think many leaders are willing to say. I know people right now in true leadership roles, white, black, old, and young, who have said directly to me that the weight of knowing that they're not truly doing it in the way they feel is best, they're doing it only in the way that looks best. That they'll vote a certain way because it looks a certain way, not because they think it's right. I know people who who have spoken out against abortion, who have supported abortion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that dichotomy is so tough. That dissonance is so tough. So there's a balance there. You can't do everything for the like of the people. You have to have a mission that you all commit to. But then in the same way, I'm on the other end. I can't just be mission focused. I have to care about the cares and concerns of people, which I love them. I love everybody in this community. But to care means I intentionally listen and act upon those concerns.
So how do you get them? And you know, I'm like, oh, the people of the heart.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm like, I don't care what you're saying. Where your heart at right now?
Right.
Your heart don't sound the same. That's what
No, I understand. You feel it.
Black women,
That's
like,
it.
Your heart don't sound right. The silence is different.
Let me put my ear to your chest.
Right. But like, I don't understand, and this could be me, like how a mission is created in serving people when you say, and it might be just using different words. Mm-hmm. This is the mission I have for the people without considering the people. That's how I'm translating it. But is that what you're saying? I
mean, and you can look through history, but like the loud majority at one point ran the state of Alabama, right? When we were talking about King, and a loud minority changed the nation. Who you listen to in the sense of what is right versus what numbers of majority you consider the most. So there are people I listen to who say the direction of these, let's just say a project, needs to go in this direction. It's going to make a lot of people upset. That's a majority of people.
Okay.
But that minority knows in 4 years, that majority going to say, thank you for doing that. Maybe they're not to me, but they're going to be thankful that it happened.
Okay.
So I listen to certain people who sometimes are not of the same color of the people who are going to be impacted, the same socioeconomic level of people who are going to be impacted. But the way that we have coordinated plans to make actions in that minority have had success. What is important for me in the first 4 years, I'll give an example of, a lot of times because of my immaturity, those care and concern moments that could have lended more of an input, I didn't listen to because I was so hungry, so focused on that mission. And I exclude them. I don't feel I do that the same now. But even in this moment, in situations you and I have been to and been through, we're more aware of, I'll say it for me, as a leader, twofold. Does this actually help the people? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a mission that I could get completed, but does this organization actually help the people? Once you can answer that question, then you can move to the second one. Who are those people? Or you reverse it in a way. Who are the people you're trying to help? Does this help the people? Does this help the people? Who are you trying to help? And then for me, it's like if you put a problem on my table, I was just going after it. I was just
solving the problem. Like, the focus is the problem.
That's it.
Not really seeing how the ripple effects of.
Exactly. We ain't got no commercialization. All right, bet. See y'all. I'm about to go get commercialization. We need a road. So again, I was paid these roads. Okay, Oakwood done. Bam, boom. Well, we didn't get these other roads paid. Oh wait, you see what I'm saying? Every problem somebody was putting on my table, I felt I could change criminal justice reform in a year. I thought I could. I'm serious. I'm so serious. And then when those people from those organizations were like, oh, you didn't change it, it would debilitate me, right? Because I'd be like, well, I tried, but I should have said to them, hey, this is a little bit bigger than me. I need 2 other votes, at least 2 other votes to do this. It's going to take 4 to 5 years. I might not even be here. I could say that now. I wasn't saying that back then.
Where are you not a leader in your life?
Honestly? Where am I being led, or where am I not a leader? Where do I feel like I'm following?
In what part of your life are you not the leader or a leader?
At this very moment, I can't think of anything. Until now, thinking about my spirituality, being led by somebody, getting input spiritually.
And that's still your interpretation of that.
Yeah, I'm saying that it was before this moment, me leading that. It's not anymore. It's a full submission to knowing somebody knows the Bible better, can speak into my life much more mature in ways like that. Go ahead.
Just with the pressure of leadership, right?
Right.
Talk about the things that lead to maybe the moments, right? Mm-hmm. When you're a leader at 9:30 at night, feeling like you're supposed to cut people's grass with the flashlight on your forehead. When you climbing up trees and falling out of them because you're cutting branches and you're not qualified.
Hey, bro, I did that.
And you're, literally thinking you could put out somebody's fire by yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
What did you think when all that was happening?
You crazy? But that has never changed.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like you're broken just like I'm broken, just like everyone's broken, right?
Mercy.
My only concern in certain situations, even for myself, is having a blind spot of being broken and thinking I'm whole.
Mercy.
That's if someone's like, I feel like I should be able to put out a fire by myself. Yeah. I also understand that is insane. I'm working on that.
If my therapist is watching, I'm working.
Feel like that, but also sometimes that helps me because I do fix things that are impossible. Like I'm okay with that balance, Yeah. So my only, when you ask me that, has always been like, man, it's two I'm good. It's two I'm straight.
Yeah, man.
It's two I'm okay. It's two, or man, I wish it was more. When we speak, it's not about a thing, right? Like, man, I need you. Like I don't want to be needed, nor do I want to need you. I want to just be. Mm-hmm. So before the need comes, because we spend time, So that's kind of been my thing. But
that's beautiful though, because just to piggyback off of that, just remembering other stuff as well. I think the tough thing, man, it's just like that just hit me hard. Where you're not a leader, who are you willing to trust to follow? Dad, we can end the podcast, bro. Because in my mind, you know what? Let's have a vulnerable moment. That is without a doubt affected my relationships in dating, also my relationships in my perspective of leadership, where you use the term mentor. Mm-hmm. And in your mind, you think, not in a bad way, but like, oh, you ain't ready to grind it. You ain't willing to cut the grass with the lights on. You know what I'm saying? Turn your car light. And
you got a whole somebody who's visiting you from out of town, trying to have a relationship with you, but you cutting the grass outside at 10 o'clock at night with a flashlight.
Oh my Lord.
Go ahead.
Mercy. But then, like, I'm saying it now because it's just like if I could go back in time and just shake Devyn, in the moments like this, I'll shake Devyn and just let him know, like you said, that's not a reality. That is you not working on your own brokenness. That is you working through your brokenness. I was so broken in that moment because of just the fear of how my grass gonna look in the morning. Yeah.
and I get that, right? I think
that's tough. That's tough.
Women do it a lot. Okay. We can't focus on something, because it's like them dishes ain't done. I can think about some dishes. I can think about the dishes. We do that. And I think as we get older and we have more responsibilities, it's like, yeah, but if I enjoy my life, if I go visit this friend, I'm going to come back and I'm going to have this. But there are relationships that give us life.
That's true.
Right? And the grass can be long another day. Or we use the community to say, you seen your friend like, dude, I'll cut your grass.
Yeah, man.
Like, but I should be able to do it. Yeah, but you can. You just shouldn't.
That's it.
You know what I mean? But I think, and even as someone, when you talk about, man, I want to be married, I want to have what you have, I always say to people, man, if you can't have a friendship that has been consistent, not just I've known you, but that both people would say, this has been consistent, this has been both sides, it's been mutual, I feel like you're here, I'm there, we have a partnership, and it's very dangerous to enter into these relationships. And I know there's some people like, what's going on, what you have with your relationship? But it's not going to solve it. If anything, marriage will expose it. Them close relationships will show you who you are.
That's real.
But you, like when we talk about leadership, you have to be in a position to trust it. That when that person says, hey, you got a problem. It's like, no. The problem is you lazy. The problem is you not out here getting it. The problem is like, so for you, it's like you got to practice not being a leader, because even if someone's wrong, if the goal is relationship and love, it will mean something to someone to be trusted. To be like, man, you trusted me with that. I'm sorry that didn't work out. But that bond is theirs because, like, man, even when he disagreed, he did it. Right. And I'll be careful with the advice I give because I know he'll listen. As opposed to, I ain't spend no time talking to you because you're going to do it. That's it. You're asking me my opinion and my perspective so that you can decide if I'm wise. Not because you actually think I'm wise.
That's real.
And that's why I say, man, do you have anywhere where you have a rule of engagement, or you have accountability right now where it's like, this person has been with me for so long through the good, the bad, the ugly, that if they say no, I'll say, okay, then it's no.
Say less. That's shit. That probably didn't even happen until just recent.
And then I would ask them, do you feel like I'm really that person? Because sometimes we think we submit and they be like, no.
Yeah. No, that's real.
So.
And that's it's tough because I can think of like 18 different experiences where that is very true. And what I'll say, even for brothers watching, when we try to reach that level where the validation is obvious to us, and then the moment comes, did nobody tell me my grass looked good? When I went and did that thing at that lady's house, she didn't even say thank you. And in my mind, I was like disheartened and like, just this perspective of like, okay, so I did all that and didn't even get the value, But I'm exhausted, I can't explain how important that is to be very realistic in that way. And then you see that again, like you said, after you come through. I'm still in it and growing in it, but I don't think that a lot of men need to know, that sense of validation that you chase to do the extraordinary, which again, I think I have a lot of good intentions because I didn't charge that lady to cut her tree down, but I almost killed myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that the value of doing that has importance when it's relative to being safe, when it's in a space that is controlled, when it's understood on both parties. Like you said, you can set those things up to be what they need to be, and then not have that hole because it just keeps going back to I was willing to fix everything in my community but myself. Yeah.
So now here we are. Child, we done talked.
Shall we talk? Boy, I'm just like,
ooh,
I really can carry a tune, bro. I mean, I could have been an Aeolian, but you know what I'm saying? I couldn't.
You actually couldn't have.
Shout out to everybody, Uncle Dan, everybody at Adventures in Odyssey. You know what I mean?
That Adventures, how did you even get there?
You know what I mean? I was at story time. You know what I mean? Y'all know what I would do. Happy Saturday.
No. Something's really wrong with you.
I get that a lot.
But okay, so what do you want people to walk away with now? Like, where are you? What should people expect? This is how can people be praying for you?
That's the biggest thing. So when Pastor Snell called me down to the front to pray over me, that was the first experience where I felt people got what that perspective is. When you pray over somebody, it don't even got to be in a tough situation. That there's a burden separate from whatever they're going through, where the prayers of the righteous avail much. I felt in anything, who I pray for, and the groups that I'm in that pray, and when my grandma pray, and my other grandma pray, and my mom pray, and all them, you're praying for me to be a better man. I'm really blessed on the councilman side. God has blessed me to be a councilman and do the things I could do. That is, the councilman wasn't affecting the man's affecting the councilman. So praying for somebody to be a better person should continually be. And then the other part is, doesn't have to be with me. I think people should be
but
more.
I want to talk about you. I want you
I'm
to
saying,
say what you need where you are.
Okay, well, I'll just say for people in current perspectives of situations, allowing the grace to hear it. I guess to hear if you're gonna want to talk to somebody, hear that person. And that's twofold. I'm saying for me to hear from somebody else and from somebody else to hear from me. And I think I've been very surprised in this process of people I thought, ministers, preachers, pastors, who wanted to hear from me just for information.
Yeah.
Like they was just nosy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I thought you wanted to hear from me to just hear from me. And that's two-sided, because then I left that meeting with a grudge. Like, you just being nosy. So I think overall, this moment is unique for us because we've always had a relationship, good and bad times, where we've been there for one another. But you're right, as a leader, to have people pray for you, to know that you're praying for Devyn.
And what should North Huntsville, like, outside of you even, like, what do they have to look forward to?
Yeah, they got a lot. It's actually a big year for North Huntsville.
Right now? Because you got the amphitheater.
Opening up, JLC about to jump. Obviously at the announcement with Trey, we got some infrastructure announcements, but the biggest one is going to be a commercialization going on North Parkway. Like, that you get into that's my spirit when I talk about what's going on North Huntsville. We just sold the most Last year we had the most houses, new permitted. That was the first time for District 1 in 14 years. People are moving to the district. Things are moving to the district. Redevelopment's happening at Pulaski at the corner.
People moving back.
Heavy.
District, yeah.
Person that was talking about me on Facebook, I had to have my little moment. Bought a house in North Huntsville in the neighborhood they said they never would move to. I ain't gonna call no names. I'm gonna be humble. But I just will say, the Lord has made a return. Not me. The Lord has made a return to Northwest Huntsville that is truly beautiful, to say the least.
Well, I'm excited about things going on there.
Yeah.
I'm also hoping that maybe a year from now we sit down and we could sit down with whoever's had your rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And they can say, no, he actually has listened, or
mercy.
No, show ain't. Because
this gonna be different.
At the end of the day, like you said, the man affects the council person.
That's a fact.
So I would hope that we could be in a situation to be like, this is community. Has he been listening? Yeah. He been struggling, but he been listening. We've had lunch.
We went to lunch. That's a big thing.
Somebody every second and fourth Thursday.
You watching? We done had 2 lunches. I've been consistent.
But, 2. I've been consistent.
That's a big number for me.
We talking about a year from now. But even, you know what I'm saying, just for you. That's one of my hopes. I hope that people don't see any situation that goes on with leadership and say, I'd rather stay on the boat. Although we need people who stay on the boat. But, my prayer is that anyone watching this would say, okay, well, I need to remember to think about the people that are affected, right? To think about the fact that, hey, because even though we say, even if he died sinking, he still would have walked on water. It's like, yeah, but who would have had to watch him die?
Mm-hmm.
And that affects you.
Right.
That's traumatizing,
yeah.
Right? So at the same time, thinking of both, like, yeah, walk on the water, but also remember there are people watching you. And that seeing someone pass away, seeing someone die, seeing someone drown could change their life forever.
Right.
And it will be like, I will never take a step on water. Right. So I hope that, that balance of like, but we need it.
Right.
But also there are people watching, they're here, that'll be affected. Like we all walk with that more. I pray that, everything that God wants comes out of this.
Hey.
Right. And that we can move on. Okay, we got other things to talk about.
Gotta get rolling. Absolutely.
We got other things to talk about.
Well, let me encourage you too, because what I don't think happens a lot of is people of the faith stay disconnected to the public service of life. You talked about King, but I'm proud of you for always being engaged. You can't talk about making a better community or being a Christian without talking about making a better community. Talking about the poor, the downtrodden, the homeless, and infecting the leadership. Having perspectives of leadership, holding leadership accountable is as Christian as you can be. So I want to say I'm proud of you for always being involved, for always having a perspective on me, for always keeping me accountable. This much grace.
I have lots of
grace. This much grace.
We still together, so I got
here.
I got grace.
I want to say I love you for it.
I love you too.
That means the world to me. And congratulations. And I'm going to sing at your wedding.
Yeah.
Can we get that on camera?
Yeah, by yourself somewhere
I'm going to sing the opening song.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk?
We don't have it clear. You can't sing it.
I don't own the rights to that song. No. But my name rhymes with Tevin.
No. Thank you. I love you for real.
I love you more.
And I truly do wish you the best. North Huntsville the best. All of Huntsville the best.
Oh, we grown.
Let's do it.
Amen.